My sister panicked. Why are cops here? I said calmly. Probably because you poison my. There is a very specific type of terror that takes hold when the people who claim to love you try to convince you that you are losing your mind. It doesn't happen all at once with grand, dramatic gestures. It begins in the quiet corners of your life. A misplaced pair of car keys inside the freezer. A doctor's appointment you have no memory of booking. A subtle, pitying glance from your husband when you swear you left your wedding ring on the nightstand, only for him to pull it out of your coat pocket with a gentle sigh. My name is Clara Hayes. I am 38 years old, and until 3 months ago, I believed I was living a life built on solid rock. My late father, Arthur Hayes, was a self-made commercial developer in Dallas who spent his entire life building a legacy. When he died 4 years ago, he established the Hayes Family Irrevocable Trust, a $14 million portfolio designed to protect the family estate, with me named as the sole primary trustee once I turned 35. My husband of 8 years, Derek, was a smooth-talking wealth advisor who had spent years trying to get his hands on the trust's management rights. My father never trusted Derek. In his final days, Dad looked me in the eye and said, "Clara, Derek loves the life your money provides, but he doesn't love the boundary that keeps him from spending it." I should have listened. It started in September. I began experiencing sudden, terrifying bouts of brain fog. I would wake up feeling groggy, my head pounding, my memory blurred. Derek was always there when I woke up, handing me a glass of water, his face a mask of deep, performative concern. "You had another episode last night, honey," he would whisper, stroking my hair. "You were wandering around the living room, talking to Dad. I had to guide you back to bed." I felt my stomach churn with a sickening sense of dread. I was talking to Dad? "It's getting worse, Clara," he said gently. "Sienna thinks so too." Sienna was my 26-year-old half-sister, the product of my father's brief, disastrous second marriage. She had spent her entire life resenting me for inheriting our father's sharp business mind and the bulk of his estate. Yet, over the last few months, Sienna had suddenly become a constant presence in our home. She would drop by with homemade soup, clean our kitchen, and look at me with eyes full of sorrowful compassion. "We're just worried about you, Clara," Sienna told me one afternoon, sitting across from me at the kitchen island. "Dad always said you were fragile under pressure. Maybe the stress of managing the trust is finally breaking you." For weeks, I almost believed them. I felt myself slipping into a dark, paranoid hole. But gaslighting, no matter how masterfully executed, always leaves a seam. And my father didn't raise a victim. He raised a woman who pays attention to details. The first crack in their illusion appeared on a Tuesday morning. I went to take my daily synthetic thyroid medication, a light blue oval pill I had taken every morning for 6 years. When I tipped the bottle into my palm, I froze. The pills were slightly lighter in shade, the imprint code barely visible. I didn't take it. Instead, I tucked the pill into a tissue, drove directly to an independent toxicology lab in Fort Worth, and paid out of pocket for a rush analysis. 24 hours later, the results arrived on my phone. The pills were not thyroid medication. They were compounding pharmacy sedatives laced with heavy doses of alprazolam, a drug known to cause severe anterograde amnesia, confusion, and slurred speech when taken consistently. Someone was poisoning me. My heart pounded against my ribs, but I forced myself to sit motionless in my parked car. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. My father's words echoed in my mind. When you are surrounded by enemies, play the fool until you can act as the executioner. Instead of confronting Derek, I began searching our home while he was at work. In his home office, hidden inside a locked leather briefcase behind a false drawer, I found a manila folder. Inside was a draft for a legal petition for emergency conservatorship. Derek and Sienna were filing a motion in probate court to have me declared legally incapacitated due to severe, rapid-onset psychiatric decline. If granted, trustee control of the $14 million Hayes Family Trust would immediately transfer to Derek, with Sienna named as the secondary contingent executor. They weren't just trying to make me feel crazy. They were preparing to strip me of my legal personhood and lock me away in a private facility to steal my father's life work. 2 days later, I discovered something even worse. I came home early from the lab and heard soft giggles coming from the primary bedroom suite upstairs. I crept up the carpeted stairs, my breath catching in my throat. Through the cracked bedroom door, I saw my husband wrapped in the arms of my half-sister. "How much longer do we have to play nice with her?" Sienna purred, running her fingers through Derek's hair. "The soup I made her is loaded with the drops Sterling gave us. She was practically drooling yesterday." "Just until Friday," Derek chuckled, kissing her shoulder. "Once Dr. Sterling submits his psychiatric evaluation to her father's estate attorney at the formal trust review, Harrison Vance won't have a choice. The court will sign the conservatorship papers by noon. Then she goes to the clinic in San Antonio, and this house, this entire fortune, belongs to us. Hearing my husband and sister plot my destruction was like having ice water poured into my veins. But I didn't burst through the door. I backed down the stairs silently, went out to my car, and drove to a parking lot 3 miles away. Texas is a one-party consent state when it comes to recording conversations. Furthermore, the white Lexus SUV Derek drove every weekend was titled strictly and solely in my name, a gift from my father on my 35th birthday. That evening, while Derek was in the shower, I tucked a microscopic, high-definition, voice-activated recording device underneath the frame of the passenger seat of my Lexus. I hired a former state trooper turned private investigator, Richard Vance, to monitor their movements and pull full bank records on Dr. Julian Sterling, the crooked psychiatrist Derek had bribed. Over the next 48 hours, the digital recorder inside my car captured gold. It captured Derek and Sienna driving to a hotel in downtown Dallas, laughing as they discussed how they would divide the trust funds. It captured Derek handing Dr. Sterling an envelope containing $20,000 in cash as a down payment for signing the false affidavit of mental incompetence. Most importantly, it captured Sienna saying, on tape, if the sedatives don't break her down fast enough before Friday's meeting, we'll just tell the judge she tried to jump off the balcony. My word against hers. They had built a fortress of lies. They believed I was helpless, broken, and drugged into submission. They had no idea I was quietly laying the dynamite beneath their feet. On Thursday morning, I met with my father's lifelong estate attorney and closest friend, Harrison Vance. I laid out the toxicology reports, the private investigator's surveillance photos, the bank transfers to Dr. Sterling, and the raw audio files from my car. Harrison sat behind his massive mahogany desk, his face turning from pale shock to white-hot rage. He took off his reading glasses, his hands trembling. Clara, this is not just civil fraud. This is criminal conspiracy, illegal drugging, and elder exploitation. They are trying to commit you against your will. I know, I said, my voice dead calm. And they expect to sign the conservatorship documents in your conference room tomorrow morning at 10. Harrison looked at me, a cold smile slowly spreading across his face. Then let us give them the meeting of a lifetime. Friday morning arrived under a heavy gray sky. At 9:45 a.m., I entered the glass high-rise in downtown Dallas. I intentionally wore an oversized cardigan, left my hair slightly unkempt, and walked with a deliberate, trembling hesitation. I looked like a woman on the verge of a complete nervous breakdown. Derek walked beside me, his hand placed firmly on my elbow, pretending to support me while subtly applying pressure to control my movements. Sienna followed closely behind, wearing a solemn black dress, carrying a designer handbag, and dabbing at her eyes with a tissue as if she were mourning my shattered mind. We walked into the main conference room. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. Sitting at the head of the conference table was Harrison Vance. Next to him sat Dr. Julian Sterling, looking nervous in a cheap suit, alongside a second man in a dark suit whom Derek didn't recognize. Derek pulled out a chair for me, pushing me down into it with patronizing tenderness. Take it easy, sweetie. We're almost done. He turned to Harrison, pulling a stack of papers from his leather folder. Harrison, thank you for meeting us on such short notice. As you know, Clara's mental state has deteriorated rapidly over the last 90 days. She's suffering from severe hallucinations, paranoia, and loss of cognitive function. Dr. Sterling here has conducted a comprehensive evaluation. Dr. Sterling cleared his throat, adjusting his tie. Yes, Mrs. Hayes is showing classic signs of early-onset vascular dementia paired with severe psychotic break. She is a danger to herself and her financial assets. I have recommended immediate placement in an inpatient psychiatric facility in San Antonio. Sienna sobbed softly into her tissue. It breaks my heart, Harrison. But as her sister, I agree. Clara needs to be locked. I mean, cared for. We need to sign the trustee transfer documents today so Derek can oversee her medical bills. Harrison Vance didn't touch the papers. He leaned back in his leather chair, looking at Derek with unreadable eyes. That is a very thorough story, Derek. But before I execute any emergency transfer of my late friend's estate, we have a few procedural items to review. Derek frowned, a flicker of impatience crossing his face. Harrison, there's no time for bureaucracy. Clara is unstable. Look at her. I am looking at her, Harrison said quietly. And I am also looking at the toxicology report from Fort Worth Memorial Laboratory. Harrison slid a sheet of paper across the glass table. Derek blinked. What is this? That, Harrison said, his voice dropping an octave, is a blood panel taken from your wife 72 hours ago. It shows lethal amounts of prescription benzos in her system, drugs she was never prescribed, but drugs that Dr. Sterling's clinic conveniently ordered in bulk 3 weeks ago. Dr. Sterling went ghost white. He abruptly stood up from his chair. I don't have to listen to this. Sit down, doctor, said the stranger in the dark suit sitting beside Harrison. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a gold badge. I'm Detective Miller with the Dallas Police Department Financial Crimes Division. This room is currently surrounded by federal agents and local law enforcement. Sienna gasped, dropping her designer bag onto the floor. Derek's face drained of all color. He spun around to look at me. Clara, what is he talking about? You're confused, honey. I didn't stutter. I didn't tremble. I straightened my back, tucked my hair behind my ears, and looked my husband straight in the eye with a cold, terrifying clarity he had never seen before. I am not confused, Derek, I said, my voice cutting through the room like a razor. I haven't taken a single one of your poison pills in 5 days. I reached out and pressed play on the small black speaker sitting in the center of the mahogany table. The audio file exploded through the room's sound system. The acoustics were crystal clear. Once we present the petition for emergency conservatorship at Arthur's trust review on Friday, the board has to yield trustee control to me. Derek's recorded voice boomed through the speakers. And what about Clara? When does she go to the facility? Sienna's voice echoed right after. Monday morning. The private clinic in San Antonio. She won't have access to a phone or a lawyer once she's admitted. I can't wait to move into the estate. She never deserved Dad's money anyway. Silence descended upon the conference room, a thick, suffocating silence that felt like the air had been sucked out of the building. Sienna collapsed into her chair, hyperventilating, tears streaming down her face as she pointed a shaking finger at Derek. It was his idea. He told me he loved me. He said we would take the money and leave. He bribed the doctor. You crazy bitch. Derek screamed, turning on Sienna, his polished facade shattering into pure, ugly desperation. You're the one who put the drops in her soup. Enough. Detective Miller shouted, stepping forward. The heavy double doors of the conference room swung open. 4 uniformed police officers marched in, handcuffs jingling at their belts. Derek Hayes, Sienna Hayes, and Julian Sterling, Detective Miller announced, reading from a legal warrant. You are under arrest for criminal conspiracy, grand larceny, illegal distribution of controlled substances, and attempted forced conservatorship fraud. Derek stumbled backward as the officer seized his arms, pulling his wrists tightly behind his back. He looked at me, his eyes wide with a pathetic, desperate terror. Clara, please. I was confused. She seduced me. We can fix this. You love me. I stood up slowly. I walked over to him, standing inches away from his face. I reached out and gently straightened the lapel of his cashmere jacket, the same way he used to do for me before handing me a glass of poisoned water. My father told me you loved the life my money provided. Derek, I whispered softly, making sure only he could hear me. He was right. But you forgot one thing. The trust doesn't just protect my money. It protects me from parasites like you. As the officers hauled Derek, Sienna, and Dr. Sterling out of the high-rise in handcuffs, the entire office floor watched in stunned silence. Sienna was hysterical, sobbing loudly as the metal cuffs bit into her wrists. Derek kept screaming my name until the elevator doors closed, cutting off his voice forever. 3 months later, the legal storm settled. Derek and Sienna were both convicted on multiple felony charges, facing significant prison sentences without the possibility of early parole. Dr. Sterling lost his medical license and joined them in federal custody. I sat on the back patio of my father's estate, wrapped in a warm blanket, watching the Texas sun set over the rolling green hills. The $14 million trust remained untouched, fully secured, and under my absolute control. I had stripped Derek's name from every asset, every deed, and every memory I possessed. For months, I had lived in a terrifying world where I was forced to doubt my own mind, my own eyes, and my own sanity. But as I took a slow sip